This podcast is the result of my passion for languages and for talking to people. I have conversations with language professionals who are willing to share their experience. We focus on their work, but also on how their love for languages has shaped their personal lives. I started my career as a researcher in terminology, but I found my passion for working directly with clients when I lived in the United States and started working as a language consultant for global companies like Sony, Apple, and Google. When I came back to Europe, I was introduced to the world of LSPs, where I had multiple roles: project manager, vendor manager, and terminologist. Now that I am fully dedicated to my own projects, I provide language services in English and Portuguese, mentoring and consulting for the localization industry, and of course, I'm also a podcaster. Find out more on LinkedIn or Instagram and get in touch if you'd like to explore how I can help you with your projects. I am Rita Prazeres Gonçalves, the language worker. Hi, everybody. So this is the first ever attempt to a reunion episode, right? And so I have guests who have previously been on the podcast, which is like, let's try this one too. Why not? Right? So it's been a whole year because they were in my first batch of guests. And that's why I think it was totally worth it talking to them and see what they're up to after a whole year. Maybe their hair has grew, all of the things have happened, maybe not, but we'll see. But in terms of work, I know that you've had a lot of changes this year. So that was a really big one. So, I mean, I could say in no particular order, but because there's got to be an order. So I would say let's go in the order of appearance in the podcast, which means that our first person to introduce herself briefly is our very popular Suzie Withers. Hi, Suzie.
Hi, Rita. Thank you for the introduction. I'm Suzie Withers. I'm a French to English translator, and I'm also a content writer, ghostwriter, and copywriter in English as well.
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of writing going on in Suzie's life.
It's all about the writing. Yeah.
Yes, I believe you. I believe you. Then, in that case, we have Kelsey, I suppose.
Thank you for inviting us on again, Rita. I'm really excited to come back. I had such a good time recording the first time. I'm Kelsey. I am a freelance translation account manager, a French to English subtitler, and a social media consultant.
Sounds very good. And then we have our amazing Jane.
Thank you very much, Rita. It's lovely to see you again and see everyone. Good idea to get people back in groups, I think. It sounds like fun. I'm Jane Eggers. I'm a German to English translator, and I work mainly with IT companies in Germany, Switzerland, and Austria.
Mm-hmm. So our Jane, she's British, it's true, but she's now in love with Germany for many, many years. So
Oh, yes.
I guess UK, you lost her.
Yeah, it's been more than half my life now, so I think
Yeah,
I'm stuck
I
here.
understand. So what was 2023 like for you, Suzie? Because you were in the podcast, I guess we recorded on January 7th, something like that. So it has been a full year. And no, it hasn't. She's like,
I can't believe it's been that long. I just can't believe it's been that long. It seems like, a couple of months ago. And I looked back at the channel and I thought, really? I can't believe that. So, 2023, it was a year of ups and downs for me. 2022 had been a really good year. And I started 2023. I don't know what day it is, to be honest. I started 2023 feeling quite optimistic for more growth and great things, but stuff happened and, AI happened. One of my favorite clients actually made lots of people redundant in the company, which meant that they kind of scaled down their translation activity. So a client that I was really reliant on in 2022, they reduced their activity. I had to become less reliant on them, but I did. And I was pleased that by the end of the year, I had quite a good spread of clients. I wasn't overly reliant on any one client, but overall my income had gone down. But at the same time, I started doing new things like the ghostwriting. interviewing people, writing an article, and then that getting published with their name on it. So that was a new and exciting thing that one of my clients approached me for. And I guess I've branched out more into English writing rather than just translation. I'm still mostly a translator, but I have these other strings to my bow now. But yes, I've started 2024 feeling a little less optimistic and a little bit concerned for the future of my profession.
But is it focusing specifically on translation, because the writing career, maybe it's different.
Well, I mean, writing is also affected by AI. Let's not forget that. Generative AI affects copywriting, content writing. So, I don't think I didn't deliberately choose those different activities to protect myself, because I don't think it's necessarily going to work. But I'm just doing what I enjoy. And if I can't do what I enjoy anymore, I'll do something else. And I never thought I would say that about my freelance career, because it was a deliberately chosen career. But it does feel like people are trying to pull us in a direction that I certainly don't want to go in. So, I may have to do something else. And that's fine.
Another moment for reinvention.
Changes in my life.
Yeah,
I can make another change in my life,
I know you can. You're full of surprises. So, Kelsey, however, I know that your year has been full of events, not necessarily for work specifically, because I guess that's not as popular or as talked about as your other activities. At least I don't know as much about your freelancing career and all that. But let's say that a lot happened that I'm sure it will have consequences on that. But there was a lot of things. I cannot even remember anything. So I better allow you to say it so that I don't miss out on any of the information.
Yeah, I mean, my story is very, very similar to Suzie's, actually. I think it was just under a year ago that you and I spoke when I first appeared on the podcast.
Yeah.
And I started 2023 after a really good 2022. But I also started 2023 being really burnt out by 2022. Like it was a great year financially, loads and loads of work, but it was too much. It was overwhelming, and I didn't entirely feel ready to start the year. I was optimistic because there was lots of things going on. Aniko and I had just launched Team Translator, which was getting really popular really quickly. There was a lot of things. There was a lot of movement, but and I think this is kind of indicative of the industry as a whole. Things kind of slowed down for me, but it meant that I was really able to focus on new things and focus on things that I had been wanting to get to in 2022, but just did not have the capacity to do. Things, real passion project things that kept kind of like niggling me in the back of my mind and being like, oh, I really wish I could get to that. I really wish I had time for that, but I just didn't. So, obviously spending a lot of time on Team Translator, growing that, and nurturing that, and making sure the community was as inclusive and supportive and safe as possible. So that took up a lot of my time. I worked on launching a course with Teresa and Nicole and Katie, which you interviewed us for as well. That was my first experience in course creation. So that was a whole dilemma and experience in and of itself. I feel like you probably cry reading the group chat between us four, just because it was so up and down. And we were really supportive of each other. But yeah, it was definitely not the easiest thing that I've ever done. And then, of course, kind of coming towards the end of the year, doing all the prep to launch my website and launch my new LinkedIn profile review service, and working more on the social media consulting side of things. I still have my project management clients, and I still have my subtitling clients and stuff like that. Work has slowed, but being able to tap more into that social media aspect of things has just been, it's really filled my cup. It's what I wanted to do more of that I just didn't have time for in 2022. So I'm so glad that I was able to kind of, even if it meant taking a little bit of a financial hit, I still had the time to be able to devote to it and set it up properly so that it's incorporated into my business properly now.
Wow, that is a lot. How about Jane? How do you feel like the whole year went since probably February or March that you were in the podcast?
Yeah, I feel like I'm almost on a different part of the cycle to everybody else. I keep reading about how bad it is in the industry, and it's been a bad year for a lot of people. I totally get that. For me personally, it's been better. I had, well, I also, like a lot of people, a massive crash at the beginning of 2020. I lost a big, important client who I'd let have too much of my earnings. Looking back, that was a mistake. They broke away, and then we went into lockdown. So it was a kind of, moment, what do I do now? And at the same time, I kind of ended up pivoting back around to IT and back around to, moving my stuff over from Facebook to LinkedIn. And so that was like 2021, also 22, things were starting to get better again. But this last year, 2023, things were really, really good for the first time again. I had a massive increase in revenue, which was really cool. I've got good clients. My hourly rate is doing well. So yeah, I mean, who knows what's going to happen? And I realize the whole situation is not great in general, but for me, it was really, really good, really good. It felt enjoyable again. It felt right. Got some cool new clients. One thing I was thinking, I did a lot of networking at the beginning of the year and maybe overdid it a little bit with the travel. And I went to Utrecht to the BP conference where we all met up actually, which is amazing. But I also did a networking.
We all, as in I'm not included, sorry.
Well, we three all, yeah.
I'm sorry for myself.
Sorry about that. Come next time. Yeah, and I did feel like at the beginning, in the middle of the year, I was like, oh, wow, that was a lot. Let's kind of tone that down next year. That was also a reaction to the pandemic where we couldn't really travel. It was like, no, I'm going to do all the traveling. So it was fun though. That was good. Another thing that I've really worked on is just allowing myself to be more creative and just put it out there and not worry so much. I think a lot of that's, hopefully coming across in my LinkedIn posts, but also sort of in private. I had a really good coaching session with somebody that Suzie also knows, Kelsey may as well, Bettina Burricht.
Yes.
And I remember talking to her, it must have been about that time, she's like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I want to be more creative. And what came out of it was just like, don't worry about what people think, try and just put it out there. And that's what I've been trying to do. And it's certainly been a lot of fun. I mean, get responses to my ukulele playing or whatever. And, it feels nice. Because that's kind of the reason why I left my corporate job in the first place, because I wasn't enjoying it. So I always tell myself now, if I want to have a job that I don't enjoy, well, then I should have just stayed there. At least I would have had the money. I've got no excuse. I owe it to my past self to make sure I enjoy what I'm doing. Otherwise, I could have had my car and my money and my my health insurance or whatever, So
exactly the same here, Jane. And that's why I'm not letting myself be dragged into this. Oh, you must adapt to editing machine translations. No, that's not why I gave up a really lucrative job to do that. Sorry, I'll go back to my lucrative job that I didn't enjoy rather than do a less lucrative job that I don't enjoy, Right,
exactly.
That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and I really relate to what you were saying as well, Suzie, about I've reinvented myself once or more than once probably, but I could do it again. I'm not quite at the point where I could say, okay, I'm just going to cruise into retirement, because I'm not that old yet. Getting there, but not quite.
Oh my God.
So, you do think about it, but yeah, no, that's not going to happen. So, but yeah, it's been a really good year.
Why?
And I'm really excited about what's going to happen now, actually. I mean, maybe it will flip back the other way, who knows? But I'm positive at the moment.
For me, it's been, of course, I have to say that it was the strangest year of my life, probably, because everything I thought it was going to be wasn't. And then I thought it was going to have the podcast for fun, for example. It is for fun, but it ended up having a lot more consequences in my life than I could ever expect. I mean, one of the things that happened was that I changed of course, I wasn't active on social media and any of that. So then I quit my job. That's true. The idea was to focus on my freelance jobs that I had already started long ago. And I thought that was going to, I was thinking, oh, if I can do, this much freelancing while I have my full-blown job, it's going to be amazing once I don't have it, because I will do so much more and I will do so many other things. And none of that happened, right? What happened was that I basically lost all my projects all at the same time, right? There was a massive gap. So my year only started much, much later. And the thing that actually kept me happy, let's say, with my choices was really the podcast. But because the podcast, above all, allows me somehow to create relationships, types of relationships that I never expected to forge with people I met using Zoom, right? I'm like, this is insane. I didn't know this is the way that things work these days, right? That you can have such intense, strong, and real relationships with people as you can just by basically having time together, right? Because this is about, right? It's about spending time together, having this connection. And this is really what the podcast brought me. It didn't bring me any work at all, not even remotely. But at the same time, it seems like it changed my work-life balance. Isn't that funny? Because it didn't have consequences at work specifically for projects, things like that. But at the same time, even I think I had the chance to kind of shift the way I saw myself in the industry. It's like I now have a place, not necessarily, as what you would expect as a freelancer or anything like that. It's not like that. That's not how I see myself necessarily, but definitely I feel like the podcast created some sort of space for people to express themselves and to be real. And therefore, after these conversations, I usually end up with a relationship that will bring me more people also, and they will eventually come into the podcast and all of that. So how was this specific thing, this connection, this networking, all of this for you? Suzie, I've seen you around many, many times in that context that is not necessarily work, but it's networking. For some reason, they call it that, right? Because it's such a mixture of things. It's a personal and professional type of development that you were doing, because it does have consequences on your work balance, work-life balance, right? Do you feel this way? Because, you've been very active this year, and I met you before in many places, and places where I am, right? Networking events that I also decided to host this year. It was the year that I got together with Kelsey to create that networking event that we do apparently on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. CET. And it's kind of almost becoming a bit of a family reunion now every week, right? And I love it when you come on board, obviously.
Yeah, it's great. I network in all kinds of different ways. And I think what I like with your networking session is that there are people from the language related, but not always translators.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a different perspective from that. And I'm part of many online groups, including Team Translator, Facebook groups, LinkedIn chat groups. I do a weekly online co-working, and I also do in-person co-working with my local ITI. Yeah, I guess it's just great to chat to people. It's isolating, our profession, when you work from home, so it's great to get out there. I did a bit like Jane last year. I overdid it on the on the conferences. So I went to the CIOL day, I went to Utrecht, I went to the Cardiff Unconference, I went to Charleroi for the B Word conference. I was everywhere. I'm scaling back a bit on that this year, but I am actually speaking at the ITI conference for some reason. I've decided to do that. So that's something that's scaring me. But yeah, it's great. I just love meeting people in different contexts, getting different perspectives, and spending time with them socially as well. As part of those big events, there's often a lot of social aspect.
Because you're talking about work, but not always, not necessarily, not fully. So it's quite good. As you know, I worry about this when I think about the networking event, because I really don't have, it's like, oh, there's no subject here. We're just going to talk about whatever. But then I worry a bit, oh, if I'm not talking about work, maybe it doesn't feel like it's for language professionals. So let's see if I can. So sometimes I think about it too much, and it doesn't have to be that way, right? So for Kelsey was a year even with awards, right? And I guess your perspective about your career path and your relationship to social media also kind of came together from what you just said, right?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes from the conversation about networking because yeah, so in November, Aniko and I traveled down to London for the Digital Women Awards, and we won for Women-led Community of the Year. And it's that word community, it's having team translator, and we'll do meetups on almost monthly, when we can make sure that we fit it into our schedules and stuff, and we've got enough prep for it. But it's just so nice to connect with people who know exactly what you're going through. If my husband comes home after a long day and I've just had it up to here with emails and whatever else, chasing invoices or anything, and being able to chat to him, that's nice. But it's not surface level, but it's not deep either. And being able to chat with other translators, especially other freelance translators that know what you're going through and know what it's like and have had that same exact experience maybe 10 times before, and that really be able to kind of empathize with you, it makes such a massive difference. And so it might be unbelievable, but I'm actually a massive introvert. I am not. I definitely need recharging and stuff like that. So picking networking that I really, really feel like can fill my cup, can, energize me and can inspire me, and maybe have a little bit of that translator therapy aspect going on where we need to commiserate a little bit. That's really helpful. And then in person, it's also, I'm going to marketing events, that kind of networking where the specialization where people are kind of speaking my language type of thing, that's really, really helpful as well. And it just kind of helps me keep the pulse on everything and stuff. So yeah, it's choosing the things, for me, especially as an introvert, choosing the things that really kind of energize me, inspire me, make sure that I am kind of, flexing that creative muscle and building those relationships and stuff. So it kind of all comes together with social media, because that's another way that I kind of see as networking, really. Every day I'm getting messages from people who are telling me their deepest, darkest fears of the industry, or needing advice because they're, having trouble with something, or, this, that, or the other thing. And if I can take 5 minutes out of my day and do something kind for someone, they're probably going to remember that. And we're going to start that kind of relationship, and we're going to start from a place of trust. And, that kind of, for me, that happens before they even message me. I've built that trust with them.
Yeah.
And that's why they feel that they can message me. So it's all part of the relationship building. It's all part of that community building. It's all part of the networking.
Yeah, I hear you for sure. With Jane, I'm not sure that you attend lots of other networking events as such called that, but definitely I know that you have a thing for these virtual coffees, and we had one last week, right?
We did, yeah.
But do you attend lots of other things like that, or
I do
not
a lot
necessarily?
of one-to-one stuff. I think what Kelsey said about choosing what works for you, I think that's so important. And I don't always feel that comfortable in this sort of slightly bigger networking groups. So I really like to meet people one-to-one or one-to-two, or, and I do a lot of that online through LinkedIn, or also in person here in Heidelberg. I mean, we have quite a thriving BDU group locally as well. So I'll do that. I go to their dinners occasionally, but yeah, it sort of takes somebody to prod me a bit and say, I'm going and you're going to come too, and I'll be like, oh, okay. But Yeah, but that's the nice thing about it. I mean, it's really funny actually. If anyone who knew me at school would be really surprised at how sociable I've become, because I was always really shy. So yeah, it's finding a way that works for you, and it's lovely. I really love that. I'm also in the I'm going to name drop quickly, Espresso Plus group, which is a great bunch of.
You can name drop anything you want. Anyone.
Thank you.
Here is the place.
Well, that's John Esperian's group, paid membership, and that's a really nice bunch of people too. So that's I love having my translator network, but it's also nice to know other business owners because they just bring a different perspective. And it's so exciting when you're kind of telling them about your problem, which you've just got your kind of one track mind, and this is this because this, and they're like, yeah, but why? And they don't understand why you're kind of going that way because they've got a different perspective. So that's really, really valuable as well, I find. It's good to have both, isn't it? You need somebody who really gets you sometimes, and other times you need somebody who's a challenge or can challenge you, should I say. So yeah, I do networking, but it tends to be kind of on a smaller one-to-one thing. Or
I do all kinds these days. But I mean, I guess when you have something that is already kind of established, because now that I see that a lot of people are showing up and a lot of the same people are showing up, which is really a new experience for me, and it's like, even I am having a bit of a sense of community these days. And that's also why I wanted to do this reunion series. I mean, there's other people who have been in the podcast that are coming back. And I thought about it from that perspective, like, oh my God, what about having 2 or 3 at a time, just so that everybody can chat and talk about this and how important it is in our lives, really, to get to know each other in whatever capacity that we can. So, Suzie, I would say, or I mean, what would you say to someone who is kind of, as their New Year's resolution or whatever it is, they're thinking that they should follow a little bit more this path of, branching out and getting to know people, and how to go about that when you've never done it before? I mean, because you reinvented yourself recently, right? You changed your career, you changed your perspective, you're now participating in all sorts of things. How do you think one steps out of being more, let's say, isolated, and then going out into the world, using what you have, your community in whatever job you have, but in this particular case for us, people who work in languages, and kind of make this virtual community a virtual but closer and intimate community? That's it.
Wow, that's quite a question you're asking now.
I hadn't thought about it myself.
How do you do that? I guess like everything, you take, and I think Jane had a post about this, you take the first small step, and sometimes that is the hardest part, is to take the first step, but it's the necessary step that you have to do. But it could be tiny, it could just be putting a comment on someone's post on LinkedIn. And as Kelsey said, LinkedIn, that is a form of networking, of course, and you can find your people on LinkedIn. You can find what resonates with you, start commenting, start following that person, interact with them more, and maybe message them after a while and say, do you know what? Your content really resonates with me. And just start building small circles. And then eventually those circles might overlap or become bigger. But just start, I guess.
So, Kelsey, what would you say? First, me, everybody knows I've had the inspiration from, I say this all the time, Kelsey's videos and Suzie's carousels. So that's my thing. That's how things started for me.
I mean, it's much the same advice, it's, I posted something last week. It's like being scared and doing it anyway, because it doesn't get easier. I can't, you're never going to prepare yourself enough to fully feel confident in putting yourself out there, or posting on LinkedIn, or turning up to your first networking event where you don't know anyone, or going to your first translation conference, or anything. You're never going to feel fully prepared. It's never going to happen. If you wait and wait and wait, then it's just never going to happen. So acknowledging that fear and saying, okay, thank you. I realize you're trying to keep me safe, but I think I'm okay here, and putting yourself out there anyway. It's much easier said than done. I think we can all attest to that. But it is just kind of sitting with that, acknowledging it, saying hello, yes, you're here, thanks for your help, but I'm going to do this anyway.
Yeah. So Jane, what would you say? Since you're, I guess, more recent on the whole LinkedIn specifically, let's say.
I think I certainly agree with what the other two have said. I think trying to take the pressure off yourself, first of all, not beating yourself up, acknowledge that you're doing something and you are making progress or whatever. I'm a big fan of Elizabeth Gilbert, and she has this TED talk about it's not our job to make the masterpiece, to make the magic, it's just our job to turn up. So I try and tell myself that I don't come on LinkedIn thinking, right, I have to get 20, 30, 40 likes on a post. My job is just to come and make the post. And then it's done, and then I'll post again. If I have the goal to post 3 times a week, I'll try and stick to that, but I'm not trying to have the goal of having a certain number of likes, and that helps me. And then sometimes, like my post that I did today was just a kind of off the cuff thing, and it seems to be doing really well. Other days I'll put loads of effort into something and it'll just go flat. It's not, I feel like I can't really always influence it. I don't really know. So you can't depend on that stuff to make yourself feel good. That's not what it's about, right? I feel like it's about turning up. So keep doing that. Take the small steps, keep turning up, try and get the ego out of it. It's not, if I don't get many likes, it could be like for a myriad of reasons, people just didn't see it, or they didn't have time, or whatever. It's not because they don't like me or I'm not good enough or something as a person. Maybe the post wasn't good enough, but it doesn't take away your value. I think that's really important for me to remember that, I am worth it, or whatever. It all starts to sound cheesy when you talk about this stuff, but I think that is really important to maintain a sense of your own value apart from what else you're trying to achieve. And then that takes the pressure off, and then you do achieve more through that, I feel.
Yeah. So I do almost see podcasting as the same as networking somehow, because in my case, that's basically what happens. But I'm sure that you've all noticed that a lot of people's New Year's resolutions included being a guest on a podcast, right? Have you seen that? I've received multiple.
I saw one, which is when I mentioned you, Rita.
Exactly. You were the first one. And then for Leaf translations, right? Or localization, I think they're translations. And then all of a sudden, my inbox was filled with people that I know telling me about people that they know who want to be on a podcast. But when I approached a few of the people, they were a bit shy. Isn't that interesting? So the question is for all of you, and then I'll leave you alone. So what did you think about when I first invited you to come on the podcast? Was it your first podcast? How did you feel about the experience? Would you recommend it? You're back, so I guess it should be fine, but how did you feel about this whole thing? I guess, Suzie, I had recently seen you in another podcast or video, something like that with Adrian, I believe. And then I was like,
my first podcast was with Adrian. So right. that sort of got the first one out of my system, and I was incredibly nervous. And because he sends you a list of questions and stuff for you to think about beforehand. So he prepares you really well, and he also obviously cuts it. He edits it afterwards. Right. So I think coming on yours where I thought it wouldn't be edited, and I was a bit worried about that. So it's the next step up, isn't it? You have a prepared podcast and then an unprepared podcast. And also I did one with Jane Kim. She went through interviewing lots of people. So I went on her podcast as well before yours.
That was my first one, actually. That's true.
Yeah. So what was my point?
Sorry.
Yeah. I feel nervous. I'm nervous right now, I might not sound nervous, but I am. But I know that visibility is very important when you have your own business. And to me, being visible and being myself and talking naturally about the things that I care about that's important to me. So that kind of overrode my fear. And the results that I see from going on Adrian's, people still message me today and say, I've just seen you on Adrian's podcast, So that shows me that it is a worthwhile thing to do, and that it's a valuable thing to do, and it's an exciting thing to do.
I'm glad to know about that. So, Kelsey, you were very popular with your videos when you came on the podcast already. Obviously, you probably have been longer than I know. But did you have experience coming on podcasts or not much?
Yeah, I had been interviewed for a couple of podcasts before coming on yours. But one thing that really stuck out about yours when I came on, I mean, you and I had been chatting a little bit beforehand and stuff. We talked about you setting up Vox Laboratorium and stuff like that, and that was really, really, it was nice to kind of have that connection with you before coming on the podcast. But one of the things that I kept saying to everyone after our interview was, Rita, that was like the most well-reassured and thoughtful interview that I've had. That was
with
the
no
nicest...
research at all. That's great.
That's what it felt like. It felt like, it wasn't surface level. It wasn't just like, oh, Kelsey, she's out here making TikToks and stuff like that. It was like, tell me about you, and let's talk about you and how you feel about getting there, and all of that kind of stuff. And it just felt so natural. It felt really, really, like I said, well researched and thoughtful. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. So obviously, when you asked me to come back, I was like, yes, because it was just such a positive experience for me.
Yeah, come back all the time. It's the third time.
It's like there's a real genuine interest from you, Rita,
100%.
and a passion, and that really.
The idea is to talk to the person, right? That's why it's called the language worker, because it's not the language worker. Yes, I say I'm the language worker. Of course, I'm one of them, right? But the idea is to get to know us people who work in languages. So that's really the perspective of the thing, right? That's why I don't send previous questions or anything like that, because I understand that you need that if you're going to go deep into the ins and outs of the job or very specific things about your specialization and all of that. And that's not really my intention, because there's lots of other things like that. Even if I do an episode with people that have in common the fact that they do the same type of translation or something like that, it doesn't mean that it's about the thing, right? This is what brought them together, but it's not the thing itself. So the person behind it or in front of it is really what's most important. So, and then we hear about our Jane's experience with podcasting.
I got thrown in the deep end with podcasting. My very first podcast, which must have been 2017, I think, was in German.
Oh, wow.
So, but it was in German, so foreign language for me, but it was done by two pretty good friends. There were people from my business network, local, like in-person network here, and they'd been interviewing several of the women in our group, and I sort of I liked them a lot, and they had a lovely setup. It was kind of pre-Zoom actually, and they came to my house and they set it all up. It was very professional.
Oh, I'll start doing that. Come on.
No, not that things are different now, but it just made me feel very, very comfortable. And that was a lovely way to start it. And I knew they wouldn't publish anything without me feeling comfortable, and that was nice. With you, it was great with you. I think, I was just thinking about it while the others were talking. I think I watched you on somebody else's podcast, or it was a video with Anna Pirkanen. I don't know how you pronounce her name.
Oh, yes. She was my coworker years and years ago. Yes.
Right.
We did the first thing together like that.
And you did this epic video. It was massive. And it was really compelling. And I just watched the whole thing and then got in touch with her. And I think you got in touch with me off the back of that somehow. So I kind of felt that I knew you a little bit because you'd been very open in the interview with her. So I kind of felt safe, I suppose. Yeah.
The interview was about her, but they probably talked a lot. Yeah, she was my guest.
Yeah. But there was a lot about both of you.
Yes, and then she experimented theories on me and all sorts of things. And she had exercises for me and all that because she had done a lot of prepping, right? I didn't.
Yeah. It was really cool. I really enjoyed it. And I did a video with her after that as well. So she's a lovely person. But I felt like I kind of knew you. And I had an idea of what it would be like to be on your podcast. And I didn't have any qualms about saying yes to your invitation. And it turned out to be really great. I had a great time doing it with you. So
yeah, well, now we see each other all the time.
Now we see each other all the time. Now you're coming to my one-on-ones with Kirsty.
Yes, this is what happened. Kirsty told me, "Oh, we're going to have a virtual coffee with Jane." I said, "Can I join?"
It was
that's how it
lovely. I
happened.
really enjoyed it.
This is the sort of thing I do, Susie. See, it's like terrible. So, like other people are like, oh, I'm going to be annoying and all that. But I just don't think about that. I'll think about it afterwards. Once I'm there, then I kept saying, well, I'm leaving and leaving you to it. And then I didn't, right?
And she wouldn't go. No, it was really fun. I really
Started
enjoyed
talking
it.
about this and that and that, and I would never stop. So this is me crashing your parties. So that's what happened. So guys, thank you so much. This was really amazing because this is what I really enjoy about this opportunity of, getting people together. It just kind of randomly happened that you three were together in this state because you were available and all that. So it just happened that way. It was not like I was thinking for hours, oh, these three people should be together, anything like that. You probably have been together in many other circumstances, in person apparently, and everything. So I guess you're friends by now, so it's not like you needed this to get together, but I appreciate that you did, and I thank you so much for being here. I know you have lots of things and projects and things you need to worry about, but this was a real treat, as it always is, to be with you guys. So thank you so much, and we'll see you for the next reunion, maybe in 3 months. No, just kidding.
Thanks,
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank you, Rita.
Thank
Bye
you.
guys, thank you for
See ya.
this. Bye bye.